Nobody who drives the I-90 through Montana talks about mile marker 247. Not the veterans who've been hauling freight for 30 years, not the rookies fresh out of driving school. There's an unspoken rule among truckers. You don't stop there. You don't even slow down. And whatever you do, when the fog rolls in thick enough to swallow your headlights, you keep your eyes on the road and your hands on the wheel. Jake Morrison learned why the hard way. It was his third year on the long haul, and Jake thought he'd seen everything. Black ice in Wyoming, dust storms in Nevada, blizzards that turned highways into white nightmares. He'd driven through them all, delivered his cargo on time, collected his paycheck. The job was brutal, lonely, and exhausting, but it was honest work, or so he believed, until that October night when the fog came creeping across the highway like something alive. The radio had been crackling with warnings all evening. "Heavy fog advisory from Billings to Missoula," the mechanical voice announced. "Visibility less than 50 feet. Extreme caution advised." Jake had nodded, cracked open another energy drink, and kept driving. He was behind schedule. The distribution center in Spokane expected his load of electronics by dawn, and Jake Morrison had never missed a delivery. That was his first mistake. The fog appeared suddenly, as if someone had drawn a curtain across the world. One moment the highway stretched clear and empty under the pale moon. The next, Jake could barely see the hood of his Peterbilt. The white lines on the road disappeared into the murk. His headlights seemed to die just feet from the truck, swallowed by the thick gray nothingness. Jake slowed to 40, then 30, then 25 miles per hour. His knuckles went white on the steering wheel. The CB radio hissed with static, all the chatter from other drivers suddenly gone. He was alone on the highway, or at least he thought he was. That's when he saw the taillights. 2 red dots glowing in the fog ahead. Another truck. Jake felt a wave of relief wash over him. He wasn't alone after all. The other driver was maintaining a steady speed, cutting through the fog with what seemed like supernatural confidence. Jake decided to follow, matching the truck's pace, using those red lights as a guide through the blinding white. Miles passed. The fog never lifted. If anything, it grew thicker, more oppressive. Jake glanced at his GPS, but the screen showed nothing but a blue dot on a blank field. No road, no markers, just emptiness. His phone had no signal. The CB radio continued its dead hiss. But those taillights never wavered. They stayed exactly the same distance ahead, 2 steady red eyes in the void, leading him forward. Jake's unease grew with each passing mile. Something felt wrong. The truck ahead never swerved, never adjusted its speed, never showed any sign of a human driver fighting the same poor visibility. It moved with mechanical precision, as if it knew exactly where it was going. "Probably got some fancy navigation system," Jake muttered to himself, but his voice sounded hollow in the cab. He tried the CB again. "This is Jake Morrison. Anybody out there? You got your ears on?" Static answered. Then, buried beneath the white noise, something else. A voice? No, not quite. More like breathing. Slow, raspy breathing that made Jake's skin crawl. He was about to switch off the radio when the taillights ahead suddenly stopped. No brake lights, no gradual deceleration. 1 second they were moving, the next they were completely still. Jake slammed on his brakes, his truck shuddering to a halt. The fog was so thick now he could barely see his own hood, but those taillights remained visible, burning in the murk. Jake sat there, engine idling, waiting. Minutes passed. The other truck didn't move, neither did Jake. He couldn't see around it, couldn't tell if there was an accident ahead, couldn't do anything but wait in the suffocating fog. Then, his driver's side mirror caught something that made his blood freeze. Another truck was pulling up beside him. Slowly, silently, a massive semi materialized out of the fog, rolling past his window. But there was something terribly wrong with it. The cab was dark. No interior lights, no dashboard glow, nothing. And as it passed, Jake saw the driver's seat. It was empty. The truck had no driver. The steering wheel turned on its own, adjusting with small, precise movements. The gear shift moved through positions by invisible hands. And in the passenger seat, he could see what looked like a logbook, its pages turning slowly as if blown by a wind that didn't exist. Jake's heart hammered at his chest. This wasn't possible. This couldn't be real. But the truck kept moving, rolling past him with the patient inevitability of something that had been doing this for a very long time. And as it disappeared into the fog ahead, Jake realized he could see through its trailer. Not clearly, but enough to know it wasn't hauling freight. It was hauling something else. Shapes. Human shapes. Dozens of them, standing perfectly still, facing forward. The CB radio suddenly screamed to life, and a voice erupted from the speaker. Not words, but a sound like grinding metal and distant screaming. Jake slapped at the power button, killing it, his breath coming in panic gasps. The taillights ahead started moving again. Every instinct in Jake's body screamed at him to turn around, to get off this highway, to abandon his load and run. But behind him, more taillights had appeared in his mirrors. More trucks, all moving in perfect synchronization. He was boxed in, part of a convoy he'd never agreed to join. So Jake did the only thing he could. He followed. The procession moved through the fog for what felt like hours. Time became meaningless. He checked his watch, 2:47 a.m. He checked it again what felt like minutes later, 2:47 a.m. The clock had stopped, or time had stopped, or he'd driven beyond the place where time mattered. Then, gradually, the fog began to thin. Shapes emerged from the white. Trees, rocks, a guardrail, and a sign. Mile marker 247. The other trucks were gone, vanished as completely as they'd appeared. Jake was alone on the highway, the fog lifting like a fever breaking. His GPS flickered back to life, showing the road exactly where it should be. The CB radio hissed with normal chatter. Other drivers discussing weather, traffic, where to find the best coffee. Jake pulled over at the next rest stop and stumbled out of his cab on shaking legs. Other truckers were there, fueling up, drinking coffee, checking loads. He approached an older driver, a weathered man with kind eyes and a Montana freight ball cap. "You look like you've seen a ghost, son," the man said. Jake opened his mouth to tell him everything, but the words wouldn't come. How could he explain what he's seen? Who would believe him? "Just drove through mile marker 247, Jake finally managed. "In the fog." The old driver's face went pale. He set down his coffee with a trembling hand. "You followed the lights, didn't you? The red tail lights?" Jake nodded, unable to speak. 20 years ago, there was an accident at that marker. Fog, just like tonight. A whole convoy of trucks, 12 of them, lost control, jackknifed into each other. The fog was so thick, rescue crews didn't find them for hours. By then, the old man's voice trailed off. They say the drivers were still gripping their steering wheels, still trying to follow the lights ahead, even in death. "That's not possible," Jake said, but his voice was hollow. "You ever hear of ghost ships? Crews that died at sea but keep sailing? The road's no different. Those drivers, they're still running their route, still making their delivery, and on foggy nights, they're looking for others to join them." Jake drove straight through to Spokane, arriving 6 hours early. He made his delivery, collected his paycheck, and turned in his resignation the same day. His dispatcher tried to convince him to stay, offered him better routes, more money. Jake just shook his head. Some roads aren't meant to be traveled. Some highways lead to destinations that aren't on any map, and some trucks, once they start their journey, they never really stop driving. They just add more drivers to their endless convoy. Jake Morrison found a new job after that. Local deliveries only, never farther than 50 miles from home. He tells people he got tired of the long haul, wanted to see his family more. But sometimes, on foggy nights when he's lying awake, he can still hear it. The hiss of the CB radio, the breathing beneath the static, and the sound of engines that never need to stop for rest.